다 얘는 다 꿀lun주 줘야게 삼바선럽지 직세나 안에 계속 전부 시발하게 다 준주고 나로라 아니 다 직제된 누구면도 돼 이내 된다도 돼 아니 아란저기 다미 남주 여든이 지라 아니 계속 전부 시발하게 다 가르송고도 쓰나 미 남주 덴비 미 남주 채토버 덴저 여든이 지라 아니 지기 아란저기 당 오마디 가리인 경 오마디 가와니 슈르고 예메 아니 디 세보지 뭐 마zem버 아니 다조디 치로르샤 아니 다조 가서래 다조디 치로르 문진체 아니 셈 마디버친데 셈로 다고 마제 어디 캔사버지도 제 장가다 드라메버스 오늘 전에 드라메버스 땐도 대화지 토벌은 되나 치기도 매버스나 펜토에게 요마리스 델레 낭기 낭네 아니 지기 가르서 그래 란저기 묘모 계속이 시디 매버스에게 된다라가 저 남주디 배저 땅 토버지고 그래서는 도시 랍자나요래.
And so, in terms of thinking about how to bring the correct motivation to begin today's teachings, and in general, of course, we can take a sort of perspective or motivation from the great Bodhisattva Shantideva in his master work, The Way of the Bodhisattva, or the entering into the conduct of the Bodhisattva. And here, I'm not going to recite an exact verse, but give you the meaning of one particular verse where he appeals to, as he says, those who have intelligence, particularly those of higher sort of intelligent faculty, to be careful in how we identify what we consider to be our enemies. So, for instance, if we don't use our intelligence, then when we feel that the real enemy, or the place of real sort of faults and difficulties, the real enemy is actually the sort of for instance, a person or situation outside of us, particularly a person outside of us, we may feel that they are the true enemy, and then we become sort of very unhappy with them and unhappy about the situation. But he says to those who really have intelligence and can sort of take full control of their mind will understand that the internal enemy of the mental afflictions and the cause of that mental afflictions, the self-grasping, we need to eliminate that internal enemy in order to achieve lasting happiness.
다 디제 인도 점배 아니 남바상디비 슝고 단로네 아니 다지기 아란주기 아니 묘모를 갑대 작당 등진을 갑대 작당기 리망부 쉬고주 송변나로네 안제장가 네 경기 든지 송고래 제장가다 묘모를 아란주다 콤시 숙충부 시부지 탭차여자 람사 갑대 쳐야다 각오를 해대 이나 심기 소지기 나로라 아니 알라 직 누구 당년 쪼디다 아니 묘모디긴 당진디 세기 삼로디 깨토버디 쇼고리스 아주 레 당보질 내가 디리스 딘디지 레차베 쇼라 아니 묘모라 카데 자가 로베갑라 아니 갑 삼레 묘모디 슈체타 당진디 슈체타네 아니 갑데 자마 토버치제 용도 잠베 아니 가란 저기 직딩기 나로 여번나신 그 시부지고 도부 당원도 니코 묘모데 슈체타 다디 슈체타도 니 커도 갑데자 도구면도 니 오늘 전에 코 니마징에 딱딱 쇠고 삼제니 두주 구디베 손로지라 코기 가서 콜 갑데 간데지자고서는 어디리기 삼로 쳬번에 신시 쳬바 지기나 딘지게 삼로데 네버도 고르스.
And so here, when we're in the Buddhist texts, there are many sort of methods which are presented to us in terms of how to first understanding the mental afflictions and the self-grasping as our true enemies, and then the Buddhist texts present many ways in which we are able to challenge those and try to overcome them. And my teacher, my teacher would always say, it's very difficult. It's sort of initially very difficult because we're so habituated to these mental afflictions and self-grasping. But the first place for that a beginner should start with is to be able to have just one corner of our mind that is aware of the sort of becomes aware of the fact that the thing which gives us the hardest, the most difficult time and presents the most difficulties and problems for us are is the self-grasping and the mental afflictions that stem from that self-grasping. So that's and then when we're actually sort of trying to directly challenge take on the afflictions and self-grasping, then and sometimes, of course, um, you can almost have this sense that the self-grasping and mental afflictions actually seem to get stronger and stronger as we take them on. So even if we sort of put that in the phrase that in a worldly context of trying to overcome a kind of external enemy, then the practitioner's first point is to say, I really make a commitment to trying to get these under control.
베나랑저 달라 갑데 마쳐도 좀 베냐라 다다 타르 뭐지 대체 아니 세미나로를 셈바템부 수지 언제 즉 더디드 마손의 쇼지 체네 아니 신의 따자를 용의 마자베 즉 더디 체베네 신체 아니 참병하는 주 최박하시기 아니 고 뇨모께서기 시 딜레데스 치료니 기기여이나 안 다른 뭐 대체 내 엠발데네 야 최체 즉 용구요를 되네야 쳐바 지기 림바직 나로라 아니 지기 소소기 심슈당 로고당 지기 대족이 슈디기 겜베 야 달이야 가서 우리 녀몬도 배셔당체 달이야 고고당네 담해버서야 나신체제 다 배셔당매버서야 되네야 체 토부질레 온도 좀 다코란 레베지 다코란기 아니 락자디 코란 배셔당체 다코란 매버서야 근데这个人吧用的准备当这个当然让这个年头当让这个当长久性别当 아니 ngāgi shūng nā rō nē nyōmō rō kāpte chāk tāng māntrāwe tō nē 아니 rān zhū gī tā jī gī ngāgi tēkwa rī, dō gī tēkwa rī 아니 mī gī dē, nyēndē dēbē gī dē nē nō sōng dē tsāng nā rō nyōmō rō kāpte chāk tāng māntrāwe wōng gī 아니 개발 체대be chādā rī dō gās.
And so, in terms of dealing with these mental afflictions, there are kind of different sort of levels that we different sort of methods that we can use in terms of dealing with them. So, one of them is just to, in terms of dealing with of fighting with the enemy, but in the sort of analogy of fighting with an enemy, we can just stay far away from them and sort of prepare ourselves in our mind for when we will eventually encounter them and fight the battle, sort of prepare ourselves and get ready. The sort of way in which we start to try to challenge that enemy. And it's particularly trying to challenge the sort of root from which that enemy stems, which is here the self-grasping, which brings the mental afflictions. But then sometimes in that fight, maybe we need to we engage in the fight, and then we maybe need to withdraw again to a sort of a solitary place to regain our energy. And some sort of with inspired or enthused with the sort of courage and stuff, may take on the enemy by almost kind of tricking the enemy and then using the enemy for their own purposes. And then the greatest method of all would be where we actually take the sort of enemy into our own hands and use it as a weapon. Again, so here taking the mental afflictions into our own hands, the grasping and afflictions into our hands, and using it as a weapon to then a very weapon to destroy them. So here we sort of see in the Buddhist context a way of practitioners such as the hearers, the Shravakas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, um, and the Bodhisattvas, but also a range of practices going from those found in the sort of um, uh, Pali tradition, the Theravada Shravaka, and then in the Bodhisattva vehicle, and then up into the highest vehicle of all, the Tantric vehicle, where we see the practitioners using, taking hold of the very enemy of the mental afflictions and self-grasping themselves and using it as a weapon to destroy to destroy the mental afflictions of grasping. So there's a whole range of sort of techniques that practitioners use in order to counteract the self-grasping and the afflictions.
차도. 다 인도 아니 땅아주 최제세 삼로데 아니 너 뒤지 셰비나 아니 어란주 당인중 저기 쩌마마인 바지 담산다 지금 말했대 쩌마지 말로 배저체니 레고야라데 당보데 아니 그뒤에 생부 수르지가 나로라 아니 뭐지버지다 미데버지 레베 qab라 아니 민데버다 뭐지버디 치다 낭이 니기 나로네 낭기 삼로 땅땅직다 아니 삼로 축바다 삼로 너바다 삼로 록베 겐기 아니 알아줄이야 드라마시바 뭐지버디 용구도 삼치 딜냐바냐 도와주세 안 딘제네 아니 삼로 딘지기 삼로 땅땅직다 삼로기 샤단지기 아니 요가 땅답기 채도 앵에게 다 최치기유 삼대비나 아니 인생권도 탈바되냐로 세대 당원에 고주 좋은데 아니 가르쳐봐 탐지 아니 즉 칼라사베이네레 둘로지 컴베이네레 가르치기 연에 정말 최 되는 로토야지 다 드리지 송고 있어래 계산기 다 된다 도도로 시나
And sort of drawing together a kind of summary of from the particularly from verse 5, line 3, where it says, "And when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night," and so connecting with this and thinking about how to engage with the Dharma, how to practice the Dharma, then we were talking about renunciation and to get really sort of genuine, uncontrived feeling of renunciation is extremely difficult. But to sort of so at the beginning we have to sort of contrive it, we have to sort of create it, making effort towards developing the mind of renunciation, and so as a practitioner, we should think about this the you know the place or the thing or the place which causes us to be unhappy, which creates our lack of joy and happiness and our unhappiness in our own lives. And as a practitioner, we should be from within the two of looking outside or looking inside. We should always be looking inside to understand that the root of all of that unhappiness is a kind of faulty ways of thinking, inaccurate ways of evaluating things, mistaken kinds of mind that don't understand who the real enemy is. And then we make effort to transform those mistaken ways of mind to understand how the real enemy is, and then to challenge and take on the real enemy, and identifying that the self-grasping mental afflictions as the real enemy. And then if we practice the Dharma, practice the Dharma, practice the Buddha's teachings with that in that kind of context, then, as it says, the thought aspiring for liberation day and night will arise in us. If we maintain that at all times, then whether we're eating, whether we're sort of putting on clothes, dressing up, or whatever we're doing in our lives will become a form of Dharma practice because it's held within this motivation or context.
잘 들어? Yes. Okay. 어다디 인도 잠베 덴데 지기 삼로 나로려야 아니 카투이네 생기 곰시 나로라 랑게 미데와디 랑게 삼로 당당 직다 신기 깬체버마도 중오마디 랑게 셈 모두고 디기 연구도 세게 곰시디하고 자르차베 슈라 땅에 계산 지난주로 삼로 당세야디 제장가 참 참조르 제당데 자 덴데 삼로레데 갑려야 아니 람상 직디 매버 쇠게 탐람디 제다 제그레데 디마제 응어라 아니 미 지기 셈나로라 남샤준도 또 지기 아니 셈바 고양보 여드니치 아니 얘기 직 탐람디 녀모도 좀 매버 쇠야디 마랑 게르 직부 된다래 제국도 아니 신 심진 타예바 탐지 간에 용당데 지고 지장래 아니 디 매버 쇠게 쳐도 안주 마손에 디 매버 수역에 라자 재단 지부 지장제 매버 수역에 탑람 지부 지장제 내 인도 잠베 딘지기 탑람 딩에게 지기 라소나 에니 아니 지기 소소 삼로지 년에 호르 삼로당 배는 예 거린 징기 아니 지기 파마이네레 아니 보고조리네레 안티 쳔베 점불링기 아니 심진 컨디지네레 계급디기 컨디지네 디체도니 그군에 전에 내가 셔도사레 세기다 심슈디 딘데질레 오나 제상가 딘데 곰시디 남사 나랑의 요모디 나랑의 요모레 신의 요모의 주도 매싱의 손로디 삼로디 까체 아니 예 신심제 타예 위치도 얘기 탑람디 아랑 탐람제야디 신기 탐람제야디 지고 지장인 수도 곰시딘 자래 쳐도 아니 저럼비체게 년중 깨베 갑라 람상 년중디 깨바다 전주 세미냠도 깨고 그래 세스로지 근데 참조디
הגנים המנטליים שלנו הם כאלה שכאשר אי נחת, תודעה של אינה שמחה, עולים ופועלים בתודעה שלנו, אנחנו בדרך כלל מאשימים אחרים מאי הנוחות שלנו. אנחנו חושבים שזה בגלל אחרים אין שמחה בתודעתנו. אבל כאן, כמו שאמרנו, באמת חוסר הנוחות, חוסר השמחה,
sorry, yeah, it wasn't unmuted. So we have the habit to think of other external conditions as being the causes of our unhappiness. But actually, what we need to understand is that the real cause is not the external. The real cause is not the external person or situation. The real cause is the fact that we haven't been able to tame our minds correctly, and so we will then seek the path to liberation, which involves us trying to challenge, to counteract, and eventually eliminate the mental afflictions and self-grasping. And so in this, having made that sort of decision to orientate ourselves that way, then we have a sort of more and that's our focus for our own path to liberation. But then in a kind of, this brings us a sort of more relaxed, open state of mind, then we can understand that also all other sentient beings are in the same situation as us, and they all have the same problem, and they all, they all suffer from not taming their own minds and eliminating the mental afflictions and self-grasping. And so we understand that the path that works for us in order to lead us to liberation is also the same path for them. They all, in fact, they all have the same kind of right. They have the same kind of opportunity to be able to um, this opportunity to be able to follow this path. And so we start to expand our sort of focus outwards from not only just ourselves, but to those around us, such as our parents, to our children, to those in our own towns or cities or countries, and start to have this idea that we practicing not just for one's own sake, but for the sake of a much wider group, and understanding that my working towards we sort of think of ourselves as my working towards removing my mental afflictions and therefore trying to put an end to self-grasping. I was also for working for the same goal for all the other beings. And so slowly, as we start to develop this habit of expanding the focus and kind of aim of our practice, we bring in the next verse in verse 6 about bodhicitta.
Okay. 다 직제들 시부이나 년중 태양 남다 심제기 심바면 라메 청주지 편조 대외교로 민교의 런던 남지 청주 셈조 게시제 디나로라 다 심바면 라메 청주지 바도 당한저 제시도 저버래 다 표숨 초바 대외교로 민교의 세대 따대 삼바망고 땅고에 지어는 거죠 망보지기 청주 셈게바다 인지 개원도 전배 Shengi tuyen la sambatang uri, Shengi dungye sambatang uri, Shengi dungye meba suya la sambatang uri sido zambe. Ani, ansu sem na lo la ya, kanye chishu trobate, ngarang la kanye tomnaan dindi ju yu, Shen semje ne taya bari, ani che chaya yo ma re, ani meba suya tu sa ma re, se simshu cha de ya chi. Di chenpuchi ligi yo re, de, ina yang, 그래서 그래 디나로리아다 랜드만 손에 지름 비치기 푸숨 초바 대위기 주리스 푸숨 초바 세 직차 디디 줄도 녀지레세지 다 푸숨 초바 세되는 걸 드시 다고로 당죠
And so here in verse 6 it reads, such renunciation too, if it is not sustained by pure awakening mind, it will not become a cause of the perfect bliss of unexcelled enlightenment. Therefore, O intelligent ones, generate the excellent awakening mind. So here, the very important line here is that it will not, this renunciation will not become a cause of the perfect bliss of unexcelled enlightenment, of the excellent enlightenment. And this is a very important point, because when we start to think about others, developing the minds of compassion, and also then this mind of enlightenment, the mind wishing to attain enlightenment for all of bodhicitta, then this brings in the context of thinking about and trying to help others to be relieved of their suffering, all others to be relieved of their suffering. But the main problem that happens to us is that because the other sentient beings are so immeasurably infinite, then very quickly we will get this sense that we're not able to do it, that this is not something I can do, and our courage to engage in that process will weaken. And therefore, Je Rinpoche gives us an answer to this in the text, where he says the becoming a cause, the pure, if sustained by the pure awakening mind, it will become a cause of the perfect bliss of enlightenment. So he's giving us a key as to how to prevent our courage from weakening.
차도 다 딜레야 푸송 초바 세 딩한조 삼라에 고치 당베이나 다 푸송 초바들니 랑된 푸송 초바당 현된 푸송 초바 다 랑된 푸송 초바 세디 랑조만 손에 랑조이 단다 내당질 삼로시 당베이나 지조고 쳐도 지기 편도체 상황부지 당겨요데 양 저기 심슈지 쇼게브qabla 데스티그레데 심슈드 람상 차로 차안로야디 듬젠조 가르도 슬람나 당에 제토사 말에 디 녜윤 전사 말에서 람상지 리그죠 봐 디인도 잠베다 산지 좀 된디기 공부 시작단지 컨디시에 열었어도 잠베 아니 다들 몰람데 마소네 남게 터도 주버 지잠바 그봐 남게 타다님 심진 그 유여받나시 아니 남게도 심진 뭐 루텐 심진 타다님 봐 요레스 내가 몰람데야 다가라니스 몰람 가르치고 있으려나 저와 대다 탐지엘이야 아니 얘기 군주 유유 요모 도숨디 매버스야기 아니 탑람디 얘기 때마토고 봐도 안 얘기 가르쳐 그래 다 거두시에는 아 예수 잡투사 말했어 예수 잡투사 말했어 질라베도 잠베 아니 람상 디기 예수 잡투 모두 세디 심슈 차마 찾게 자치래도 심슈도 마차베이나 심슈 깨원도 잠베 체들 매버스 도백 탑시 지구 옆에 체슈만 탑시 지구에서 말에 심진 당단년비 못 매버나 신체지 나양 심슈 마차네 다가란 대통령 예 편도 체토 지구인스 디 심슈들 레원도 잠베 신에 딘데질라 마란조 산지 육구들라 아니 랑된 푸숨 쳐봐 세게 명대 따야지 마란조 그 랑된 다 신된지 최대 지구 요래데 랑된 푸숨 쳐오면도 신된양 푸숨 쳐오면도 그러잖아요 랑게 되는 제원도양 심슈 차주고도 신게 되는 제원도 심슈 차주고도 심슈 마차베 제제르바 베 템보시네 뚝스 대토야지 디기 셈 디기 체도 가르치고 그랬어도 아니 아주 산지주 공원도 두고 그래스 신된 매매 륜주 두고 신된 매매 륜주 두고 세드 땅아주 디 탑시 제 주던달라 아주 상마제나다 타미도 세디다 계제디 시규스레 부송 초보 대외 주르민 두고 말해서 전주 셈마제나 심주차로 그래서 달람 상거라
And so here in verse 6, well, there are many sort of ways that the words of not becoming a cause of the perfect, of excellence. It actually says of excellent bliss, the perfect bliss. And in terms of this, we have to sort of look at we have to sort of think about this explanation in terms of perfect bliss or perfect situation in terms of ourselves and in terms of others. And so if we look at a sort of ordinary example from our daily lives, and for instance, if we have a wish to benefit the society, people within this the society or our community, and again, even with this situation, eventually, because it can become overwhelming, and eventually there's so many difficulties and people or difficulties to health, so many situations to face, that we will feel that we can't do it, that our sort of courage or inspiration to be able to be of benefit then sort of declines, just for a sense of being overwhelmed. So the way in one of the Buddhist prayers, it talks a prayer about how to develop that sort of courage or inspiration to work for the welfare of others, by saying that the sentient beings are as endless or as limitless as space. They're without limit, just like space. And therefore, my prayer will also, for the welfare of these migratory beings migrating through samsara, my prayer will also be without limit, just as the space and the sentient beings are without limit. And very specifically, that prayer focuses on being able to not just to pray for them, but for the prayer is in the context of being able to help them or to give them, to show them the path which is able to counteract the mental afflictions and destroy the self-grasping and to achieve liberation from those. So, and the prayer then also says, if we put it sort of directly, I won't rest until all of those sentient beings are, I have placed them in this the state of excellence, and therefore I will. When they say I won't rest, what I won't rest means is I won't allow my courage or inspiration to decline until that has happened. So then we are sort of wishing to bring benefit to all other beings with this kind of perspective of understanding the countlessness of limitlessness of beings, and also to help us with this, we also considered the Buddha's the body of the Buddha's body itself, which is said to be the Buddha's body is said to be the perfection of one's own purposes or aims, and also we wish to attain this the body of the Buddha, which is also able to work spontaneously and effortlessly for the bodies of the Buddha, which are able to work spontaneously and effortlessly for the welfare of all beings, and therefore we develop this strong and stable courage and inspiration to attain this state of enlightenment, the state of Buddhahood, in order to be able to work effortlessly and for all sentient beings.
Okay. 다 양어 세미나를 샤고에 찍라 신기된 탈진부 제발라 아란주 셈 소리지게 나로 신된 탈진부 제야 돼 신기된 레마도 랑게된 딜라랑게된 민두 냠베 삼로디 발제 침부로 인도 잠베 아니 양내양도 셈기 소리지게 나로라야 다다 마시디나로 숭구리 양내양도 아니 현당랑 시두점베 아니 찬영부지 큰영부 소그리스 지기 샘다 야릉부샤 양릉부샤 유요 말레스 딜레야 아니 신의 단다 로종 나로네 아니 아란저기 남시기 남 계산 계주 중반난 신 남시기 균디 아니 통화매봐 지기 아니 다 담아에 매봐 도스진 전예지 남시디기 아니 디 균이 아란주 깨발렌당들 삼보지량네 양도 다운도 준비 아니 아란주 배신 심진 간더지 토비나야 아니 랑기 마다 년당 초체만용 지에 매도 준비 랑신기 셈다 예버디 쇠마수 수술락바레마도 그럼 저와도 마소는 그 중중보다 요요베지 인도 준비 신의 디 저와도 삼보다운도 랑신기 셈나로라 마이 거진세야데 양내양도 전부 있나 아니 아란주 신이 지기 닝지다 전주 셈기 투고제베데 마소나 미드 미니 버루긴 자와데다 심진 신기 버루긴 자와데 아란주 그 삼로 땅마당 지르면도 땅배 있는 아란주 자와 메디니지 매베 인도 전배 신이 아니 tin temba 세야다 tin 아니 저나 tin 소당 가르치긴 봤을 때다 tin 써야다 탑신 탈라면 야셔도 스스 심슈 마차니 파종월의 녀모 도숨기 코랑기 응원에 랑게 패버지다 코랑기 응원에 녀모 도숨 매바 마수기 봐도 오늘 란저기 냠바도 마소나 제다 지기 가서그래 딘디지 테마토베 딘디지 테마토베이나 코란저를 냠바 신 간데 지에베는 냠바 정말 펠바 딜을 하베는 냠바지 매베 세베인도 잠베 다디 딘디기 심슈지 개원도 잠베 아니 전주고 셈게 세세다 아란저 자침부 쉬우지 부디치다세야 돼 된다라 야가르게 캐바 벽에 캐바 다 야와르무 지그 쳔베다 정말로 뒤주 망슈 당사 당 냠내 망 저서데 디간을 차디기 쓰르바
And so then, in terms of this wish to attain the sort of enlightened bodies in order to help other beings, and then this is which brings then it's an important factor of the awakening mind, the bodhicitta, in order to achieve that. And one of the big problems and obstacles for us when we're thinking about working for the welfare of others or helping others is that in our own minds, uh, we think about, we will think that the aims of others are not the aims of ourselves. The purposes of welfare of others are not the purposes of welfare of others. And this way of thinking is a great obstacle in terms of developing our practice and developing bodhicitta. So, as it's mentioned here in the text, again and again, we should create this way of thinking about self and others as though they are exactly the same, that they're not sort of they're not, the purposes of others and the purposes of ourselves are not something different at all, and that as is mentioned earlier in sort of mind training, and this is mentioned in the mind training text, and also bringing in this context of how consciousness, if consciousness is without a beginning and without an end, and therefore our kind of the lives we have taken are without beginning and without end, then that must mean that whichever birth we have taken, we must have had, in those births, we must have had parents, mothers, friends, the loved ones who are close to us. Um, and this is sort of this kind of a beginningless and endless process. And therefore, we should be able to understand that actually there's no one who we have not been closely connected with. So our feeling of sense of having connection with particular people is actually just a sort of temporary kind of construct of our own. That actually, if we examine this much wider context, then naturally we will start to understand that there's nobody that we've not been connected with in a very deep way. There's nobody that we haven't uh, been has not acted as a mother or as a parent, as a very close loved one for us, and therefore this sort of creates a sense of connection with all beings, and this is the sort of root from which compassion and bodhicitta then stem, that there's not anyone that we have not been connected with. And then that starts to lead us to remember the kindness of those have been so close to us, and just as we remember those in this life, and that the best way to replay that kindness is to be able to show or to give them the path which leads to the uh, uh, the path which takes us to liberation, being liberated from our self-grasping and the mental afflictions. And then if we think that this is the gift that I want to give to others, then other forms of gift that we give to people are much more ordinary than that. So this is the inspiration, the courage, kind of courageous inspiration that we use, and that then helps us to develop bodhicitta. So all of the great masters, such as the Indian Pandits and the Tibetan masters, His Holiness, all of these great beings talk about have developed this mind, and talk about this way of developing our mind through in order uh, to develop this awakening mind for the sake of all others. So this is what is expressed in this verse 6.
מורים גדולים כמו כבוד הדלאי למה מלמדים אותנו דרך התרגול שלהם איך לעשות זאת.
알았어. 이거 다 되네. 딘데게 셈바 딘데 심슈 딘데지게 셈바 딘데지 다지게 원도 잠베 랑싱기 되네 손데 니마 되네 손데 아니 지기 겨와다 딕버르지 지기 최원도 잠베 줌젠디 랑니 조면체 신든 신조를 송체 니마 되네 손데 다 신 줌젠도 체제 앵예기 개화체 신 줌젠도 체제 니 디고마 사이 삼로디 다 니마 테넬레온다 신네.
And so then with this kind of inspiration, this sort of courage and inspiration, then what will naturally happen to us is that we will feel that from this day on, in when I'm engaging in virtue and avoiding engaging in negative and non-virtuous actions and thoughts, then I will do, up till now I have done this for myself, but from now on I will not do this only for myself, but make others the main purpose of the reason why I do this.
Okay. So from that day on, the true leader is born. Without any election, party, it's like self confidence, which even the Buddha said, when these kind of bodhisattvas are born, then all the gods and goddess who has the clairvoyance, they certainly bow down to that person, because now he is not ordinary anymore. His way of practicing, his way of the compassion, his way of reaching to people, his way to engaging with his practice is totally changed. So in a Tibetan translation for a bodhisattva is Shanju Sempa. That Pa means hero. That time he becomes hero. So that is something that we need to watch, that kind of movie.
היום הזה מנהיג אמיתי נולד ללא כיוון מסוים, הכוונה מסוימת, ללא בודhisattvat כאלה שיש להם את תודעת הערה מצד הלב.
저는 꽤 충으로 말아. 뒤도에.
איך הקול שלי נמוך או צריך להגביר אותו? זה בסדר.
Okay? Okay. My problem. 충주리 고대. 알레 디디도. 아울라 디인지리. 다리도. 디체다. 론덴 남지 충주 심주 깨스. 달로던 덴바 세데. 덴데기 천되기 삼바. 덴데기 아니 충주 심베기 쩌발라 라버 되바. 상제주 고방라 럽 되바. 덴데지기 아니 심슈 녀바도 덴지스 깨스. 참말 깨 송고요 말에. 심슈 덴지지 깬데 녀지를 녀바도 깨고 그래서 론덴 남지 충주 심주 깨스 야체. 다 되네 오는 덴지지 깨고 요나 고 셈바디 베데 가르서 그래. 짜심부 시부지 인도 잠배 고 양내 양도 딱 붙잡지. 고 심슈디 양내 양도 깨는 마 대신 고 까마카시 세긴 가시 지른 거 깨왜 개편도 말봐. 대인도 잠배 고 양내 양도 마제바니 깨주지 깨와 냠바 매바요 공내 공도 패바쇼 생아주 여러 뭐 껴도 띠껴로나 신제 아니 심슈디 빠르당 간르레스나 아니 다 들어하요 말이 단다 쇼로가 뒤뛰는 거 봐. 슈다 추시 준주체. 너가 내기 청원 담배담 단전 짜게 차요 무수추 머리 뭉배 맞은 군이 팁 몸에 스버지신 깨와로 농에 숨지 준제 매반날 내가 든들 교배 만남지 안주선의 샘조 깨버져 세졌다. 알아서 닝지 첨부 닝지 숨송배 나로네 다디 배전 닝지 숨바 민면의 배비 닝지 세대다 마제바 탐해버지다 딜 전주 셈 깨발다 고 줄은 로고야 되었다 디인도 선배 딜을 굽시자고 그래 송거다.
And so here, then in this last line of verse 6, where it says, intelligent ones generate the mind, generate the excellent awakening mind, as sort of encouragement to for us to engage in the generate the awakening mind of bodhicitta and to engage in the conduct of the bodhisattvas and to train in the path that leads to the fully awakened state. And so this is sort of giving us this enthusiasm, this kind of courage or inspiration, enthusiasm to work towards that. To work towards that for the welfare of all sentient beings. And we need to be able to hold that enthusiasm over an extended period of time. It's no use for us for a few seconds or a few minutes to have this kind of inspiration, but then for it to die. And so, just as we recite that prayer, may the precious bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, arise, where it has arisen, not decline, but increase more and more. Just as we recite that prayer, then we should also cultivate this awakening mind, sort of refresh this awakening mind in that way, and then using these the next two verses of verse 7 and verse 8 to develop our strong compassion, great compassion, and the awakening mind, where it says, they're being swept away constantly by four powerful rivers. They're bound tightly with the fetters of karma, most difficult to escape. They're trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping. They're enveloped from everywhere by thick mists of ignorance. They take birth within cyclic existence that has no end, where they're endlessly tormented by the three sufferings. By reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, please generate the supreme awakening mind. And this particularly is spoken about. There are three kinds of compassion mentioned in the great texts. And I think that this specifically refers to the third kind of compassion, which is called non-objectifying or non-referential compassion. So this, I think, is related to that form of compassion, and is something that we have to again and again cultivate the habit of generating.
다 되네 단다 디케 첨부를 쉬는 신시제 슈다 추시 윤지 체르세 디갑라 아니 알란주 게 다지기 개가 나치를 써봐 간연도 조직 도 통디고 아주 남샤 윤도네 다 점불링 녀르도 될 통거 저 참말로 아주 최제야당 딘제 상로지기 심슈바르년럽들 제장은 너가 레기 청원 담배 거자 슈다 추시 윤지 체르 너가 레기 청원 담배담서 다 레기 왕기도 직 단다 다 알란주 직 내주 망고 용해도 상말로 주던 kiến 는 도슬레버 마도 직 톱자고자 차시바 자원이니 요 말이 디도 저비 주망부 직 kiến 망부질 때는 용 주던 kiến 망부 직 삼로당당 노바도 추 망부질 때는 직 슈글 직자 직 죽을 직자도 너가 레기 청원 담배담서도 다 레기 왕기 청원스도 백 차고 차다 남대비 순로지도 아니 다디 람삼에 소토해요 말이 다 디기 강들라 디 용야기 짜와라버데만 손에 머리 버스니 디기 아니 머리 버들이 니샤지 군다다 현재 니시지 디 군다스도 템베 애니주 망부지 가란도 삼로당당 크도 망부지기 아니 랍자자니 약보지 매버치 랍자 로버시 잡지 삼로 추주지 미스인포메이션 망부지 용마 텔라 때니 아니 가란주기 당진데 때문에 지금 용구요 되는 당진 짜기 더 무슨 수스랍다 아주 마손에 구양부지 수는 정관나 탁 출룩샤베이나 삼로당다 부수도 차르와 당제 짜기 저 부수추 머리 문배 망진군이 팁스도 따빼 아주 마손 초카다시네 람사 직파 타르고선나 타르마토베디 가르선나 배추니 예 상말로 다 머미 손으로부터 지기 네버제니 강대요나 람산 타르토야 가고 유도 잠베 딘지기 대 현재들은 거라서 아란줄 현재리야다 지금 자 지우르다 컨트리지 임베나 텔라페 나스 둥간진지 페나 킵두 춘주닝지 뭐지네 코코랑 깨 따브제 코페 콘로 시오 사네페 차로야 돼 코랑 유기 당진들 쇼지기 숙청부지기 차고도 있다 세바도 요도 선배 혈류도 용도가 요만데 제장가 머리메베 막진꾼이 팁을 했다 데 인도 좀 통토야다 톱토야 람상케 요 말레스 딘데지기 아니 랑주게 삼로 딘데지레 온도 좀 랑주 아지 나당 예 chuẩn备 semjen 대다 탐지 레단 요모바다 하바다 등진 대주기 아니 tenyore라 아니 코디 샤완신 로데바디 카다 민두가 로 추바디기 왕도 송차도 와스 디지레스 두탄베 아니 디 슈마게 찌디 내년 디송셔나 근데 양 그쪽으로
Je Tsongkhapa
And so here, Je Rinpoche is sort of giving us these verses in order to really sort of fire up our enthusiasm to understand the situation of both ourselves and others, and therefore to fire up our enthusiasm and courage to practice the path. And so in verse 7, where it talks about it talks so and then we can understand through past lives or future lives, a whole continuity of many different kinds of lives, the problems of ourselves, the problems of others, the problems of the world. And these verses are stated here in order to fire up our enthusiasm to practice in relation to those. And what is also being said here in the first two lines of verse 7, where it says they're being swept away constantly by four powerful rivers. They're bound tightly with the fetters of karma, most difficult to escape. So all of us are bound within this situation under the power of our karma, and things don't just arise randomly. They arise through a whole network of causes and conditions, and particularly this whole network of causes and conditions for unenlightened people, driven by misunderstandings of the reality and mistaken kinds of minds. And so it says also here that in the third line, they are in our case, ourselves and all others are trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping. So there's a sense in which we're completely trapped, held tightly in, trapped tightly in, and some a situation which is not easy to get away from. So trapped within the iron mesh of our self-grasping. And actually, and then it mentions in line 4 that ourselves and others are enveloped from everywhere by thick mists of ignorance. So here we can think about two kinds of ignorance, which are often talked about. That is sort of more intellectually acquired, and then those sort of kinds of ignorance which are sort of very much more innate or more almost innate to all beings. And so the intellectually acquired, these are all forms of ignorance which envelop us and sort of hem us in. And so the this intellectually acquired ignorance is sort of the way in which we receive maybe mistaken advice, or we receive good advice that we don't follow. We receive a lot of misinformation, and therefore get misunderstandings about situations, and therefore, on the basis of that, our grasping to ourself gets stronger and stronger, and it's like we're kind of hemmed in or kind of imprisoned, and that sense of tightness and how we will feel sort of very stressed and uptight in that condition. And then all and then this is sort of the case also for all the beings around us, and that we are sort of, and then we have this innate form of ignorance, which even all forms of or all sentient life has this. Even the wild animals and the smallest insects, they all have this ignorance which traps them, and is this sort of deepest self-grasping, clinging to an intrinsic nature of a self, and so and this attach, and then from that this very strong attachment to oneself, which then causes karma and all of these other problems. And it's so difficult for us to us and for all beings to get released from that, to relax from that. And so therefore we take ourselves as a representative of all sentient beings and work to try and unravel all of these forms of mistaken mind.
다 되네. 몸에 씹을 지신 겨워를 동에 숨기 균체 매버 남스 다 지기 씹을 겨워로 세대 자침부 수제 지기 녀몸이 샤와인 바티스도 아니 지금 할리 게네레 룰리 게네레 젤리 게네레 이달리 게네레 다 간지지 겨워렌서 쇼라 녀몸 도송기 샤와인 로차비 쇼라 코 가수지기 또바도 네바다 가르지 임베이나야 그 닝제기 닝제 세치 그 삼도 랭월다 그뒤 녀몸이 샤완제레 샤 세도 전배 딘지 동예 숨기 균체 매바 나르고도 디왕기 레다 녀몽이 샤완인도 전배 동예 숨 동예 숨 세도 전배 동예 규르베 동예 잡아도 지기 동예 디 나로네 잡아도 지기 동예티 그 개와 가르지 렘바이나 상보이나 년바이나 가르 개와 그 밀리네리나 밀리네리나 개와 지에면도 간제 권용모비 상황진인 참배 그 간에 친부지나는 통디요레스 근데 내가 든더줘야만 어느 대소되니 나단 저와 가르도 쓰는 저도 대소 내 체디기 네 마디기 진 가수 지기냐 통하는 신 코란족이 든지기 얘기 마디나 신치지 챙기 짱 많은 거 지에면도 쓰지 다的结果就是아니 되네 양내 양도 강주 삼내 세도 강주 삼단이 묘모비 샹왕도 여바 티수도 티줄을 디기 매버데 직 아니 랑기 마체 만용이 지에 매바 삼로들이 니디기스 강주 삼내 아니 셈조 개버죠 세도 가르게 워세도 당에 대조기 단달에 탑람지 마체바다 마체는 지연 저거 민도 시제네 심슈딘이 지기 깨대베 갑라 아니 타마데라 동료도 싫어고 딱 가마 레드워드 네로도 싫으면 되나 싶다.
And here, in terms of these verses also, and particularly in verse 8 here, where they take birth within cyclic existence that has no end, they're endlessly tormented by the three sufferings. Then here we're talking about this, how all sentient beings endlessly tormented by the three sufferings, but this is process is driven by all sentient beings being under the power of their mental afflictions and the three poisons. And so what under the power of mental afflictions and the three poisons, then wherever a being is born, whether they're born in the hell realms or the god realms or in the hungry ghosts, whatever kind of realm they are born in, they're still that process still takes power under the power of the driven by mental afflictions. And so we need anyone who is under the sway of these mental afflictions, whose process, who's taking these different births, is driven by the grasping and mental afflictions, as an object of compassion. And it says in the second line of verse 8, where they are endlessly tormented by the three sufferings: the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the pervasive all conditions, conditioned all pervasive suffering. And particularly, we need to focus on this pervasive or all pervasive conditioned suffering, because wherever they're born and whatever situation they have, whether they're born in a terrible situation of terrible difficulty and despair, or whether they're born as a billionaire, whatever good or bad situation they're in, there's no great difference in terms they're all the same in having been born into that situation under the power of the mental afflictions. And so we have to have some sort of we have to have compassion for them in relation to that. And so then we reflect on all our mothers, verse 8, line 3, by reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, and we generate the awakening mind. So we have to think, well, then how's that related to me? And then we have to think, well, how do we relate that to ourselves? And then we we contemplate this in relation to this life's mother or someone, a loved one, someone very close and kind to us in this life, and then connecting with that idea that the of past and future lives, that there has not been anyone who we have not had the experience of them being our mother or extremely kind loved one to us, and therefore um, as long as they are under, as long as all of these beings are connected to us in that way, as long as they are under the sway of the grasping and mental afflictions, they will never find any form of happiness. And then with that understanding that there is no one who has not acted as our mother at some point in the past, then we give rise to this enthusiasm to be able to help them, and therefore for us to practice the path to liberation and strive to make effort in that, and also to help them in order to be able to follow that path. So we make effort for them by engaging in the path, and then that leads us to the understanding in verse 9, where Lama Tsongkhapa is talking about the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature. Yeah, so then it comes to the first line of verse 9 where it says, if you do not have the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature. So this is the way in which we're connecting.
Okay. So now, this great Lama Tsongkhapa gives us a tip, because this is coming all by his own realization. This is not just like a theory, or he's just like experiencing and what the other great master has to say. This is more his experience, sharing this to his student. And student, a brilliant student, not like a student who's not doing his homework on time. So it's more like he's ready to go into cave. At the end, it will say, now you know all these points, certain points. Now I let you go to the retreat. Go. There it is. So, what to take away from this very advanced, very profound, very inspiring experience? Experiential.
Experiential.
On experiential teaching. What to take away from this? Normally, when we talk about bodhicitta, what we need to see what we are skipping. Many of us love to practice bodhicitta, but then we don't see what is really normally, what are the main essential points that we are missing in our practice. So Lama Tsongkhapa hinted two here, which is we always have to remember that we are under the sway of the negative emotions. We never should forget, if you are angry at somebody, ultimately when you calm yourself, then you need to see they are under the sway of negative emotions. It is nothing personal. Period. That's one thing. The next step is, I really wanted to help them to reduce this sort of grasping, this negative emotion which is bothering them so much. Like every time my negative emotion, my way of thinking really disturbs me a lot. So for them, I need to help them. Then what really blocks there is, why should I do? Why should? They are strangers. And then we need to come forward thinking, they're like my mother. They were my mother. And then what happens is, what really blocked this kind of practices, how's your relation with your mother? So, right? So now you need to see the kindness of mother. If you only focus on something bad things, then you won't, even this entire world, you cannot get one good person. If you're looking for what are the bad qualities of that person. But you stay on a positive, as we say, be optimistic, then you try to see these are the great qualities I need. Even you can find a guru in a very ordinary form. That's why the Dhamma friends of Israel called me here to give some teaching. I'm full of negative emotions. I have so many problems, bad qualities. But they are thinking, I will say only good things. And then what you will get is the essence, the good qualities somewhere there, so that we are looking for. My bad quality, my bad action, my bad negative actions is my personal. I need to deal with that my own way. That you don't need to deal with it. You need to do it your own. So that reason, even you are with the family, relatives, and partner, healthy relation, we normally have to see I'm focusing in good qualities, not making a big scene from the bad qualities. That is a great teaching already there. So just thinking, like recently one of my very kind and a good friend gave a birth to a very beautiful baby. She dealt with such a great deal and almost lost her. So just only thinking, still how much she loves this baby. Not like, oh, this sentient being almost killed me. Never thought of that. So much love. Sometimes we say unconditional love, isn't it? That only just thinking, don't think something else, just oh, how much she differentiate with that and that, all these are afterwards. Only just period of that thinking, meditating on that, the kindness of the mother is so beautiful, so great. Sometimes animals are better. They don't think of all this. They are not giving me their attention or something. They only focus. So loyal, they're very straightforward. So these, my teacher will always say, if now you listen to the bodhicitta, and then you listen to the great compassion, then after that, don't you feel like you wanted to go straight to your mother and give a big hug? That's the teaching. So that's needed. Otherwise, you feel like, yeah, that teaching is good, but then nothing in action. And if you don't think of the kindness of one being, and then the greatest thing is, if that person is suffering, you will be not go there and to help. That's for sure. Because our compassion is so limited. Once you see a kindness, like a friend of mine, he's senatable kasire.
Miserly.
Stingy, miserly.
Miserly, yeah.
Stingy. Even he is quite rich. So, and then one time he got sick and somebody really took great care of him. So he really was going to give a huge kind of a donation to him. And I say, that doesn't look like you. And normally you don't do that. And this time he said, no, 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 no. Without him, I won't be alive. So the money is nothing. So money cannot buy life. So he has given me this. So money is nothing. So this, when he sees the kindness, and normally he's like $1 is so important for that rich person, so he's ready to let that go. For why? For seeing the kindness. So the kindness is the key for the compassion. Kindness is the key for the bodhicitta. And kindness is also a great key factor for the Guru devotion. That's it. So these are one of the most important things that we need to keep in our mind. Okay, now after this we talk about now how to repay the kindness. Then we talk about the going into what are the methods, best method to find.
So there'll be a 20-minute break. So I think that'll take us to about 10 p.m. UK time, 12 p.m. Israel time. 20-minute break.